hello everyone. Need to find the optimal distance to the microphone. Anyway, great pleasure to talk to you all. Today's talk is maybe something different. It's called the Universal Digital Twin or the World Avatar Project. And let me just go right into it. You've heard that I'm the director of CARES. I'm not sure whether that means anything to anyone here. CARES is one of the CREATE entities here in Singapore. NRF supplies funding to foreign universities to collaborate with local universities, mainly NUS and NTU. And our big program is on decarbonisation, and this is also a theme in my talk today. I'm also a professor in Cambridge. This is our Christmas dinner, and we have this every year, and all the information I will convey today can be found on that webpage. So if you are interested in more detailed information, here you can find it. But I'm also an entrepreneur, and that, I guess, makes me fit into here well. I have a company, Computation Modeling Cambridge. We have just founded a daughter company in Germany, and our main product nowadays is digitalization, in particular knowledge graph technology. So what's the problem? What are we talking about? Okay, I'm sure you've all heard about Industry 4.0. We have these different stages. And the keywords here is Internet of Things, cyber physical systems, Internet of Services. Many of the stands here are working in this area. So how does it work? You have companies, energy, and they are now all connected, and this makes them to cyber physical systems, potentially to the cloud, but definitely to a network. But it's not just connected, there are also services. Problem here is that you have heterogeneous data protocols. You have services that cannot talk with one another, and that has limited the speed of technological implementation. The question is, what can you do to overcome interoperability problems? And the answer is knowledge graphs, okay? Or a bit more general, the Universal Digital Twin and the World Avatar Project. You have all used knowledge graph without potentially knowing it. For example, Google introduced this technology in 2012. And in fact, there was an article in Scientific American in 2003 by Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who invented the internet, who already paved the way towards the semantic knowledge graph technology. So what does it look like? The bottom line here is data not just comes as data, but with meaning. And the meaning is organized in a graph structure. And what is special about the World Avatar, that not only meaning and data is included, but also the services that change the data and the meaning. It's a bit like your brain. Your brain does the same thing. It can record data, and it can learn new concepts and new meaning. The beauty about the World Avatar is it's unambiguous, it's connected, it's scalable because it stretches all over the internet, distributed, accessible, multi-domain interoperable, and evolving in time. A bit like what I'm going to present to you, like the brain of the world, okay? Nothing less. So what can such a system do? Well, it can find answers, and what I now show you are use cases that stretch from a molecular level to the level of the planet, right? All in one system. Everything you see is in one and the same system, but there are many, many softwares, agents running in the system. So one application is Marie. This is a natural language user interface that allows you to query chemical knowledge, in particular quantum chemistry, also new molecules and molecular properties. But you can also have large infrastructure represented. What you see here is the UK gas network, including live data. So each of these pipelines know that there are pipelines. They know what gas filling there is, and with that you can represent the country. But not just gas, you also have the environment. In this case, here we have land use. Once you know what crop is growing, you can then resource certain biofuels in an optimal way, and with that you can save cost, and of course you can also control and plan where which crop should be used. So now moving on to the built environment. What you see here is a snapshot of a first instantiation of the building in King's Lynn. We are now moving towards instantiating several cities, both in UK, Germany, and Singapore. So for example, we can also do large cities, and what you see here is Berlin. So all of the building that are within the Berlin city limits are now part of the world avatar. Then zooming in, the models you've seen were quite primitive, and this is classified by a level of detail, and this is level of detail 4. So you can zoom in, represent a building also at a room level, and that is called LOD4, and this is a HDB block in Singapore. But now moving out a little bit, you can also look at shift traffic, okay? And once you do that, you can create virtual sensors. So imagine for a moment you have information and the meaning of ships. You know what the weather is like, and you are able to pull in the weather information anywhere in the world into the knowledge graph. So you don't query API, but you query an instance in the knowledge graph. You know where the buildings are. You have a representation of technology, for example, engines. You have a representation of chemistry, combustion models that you can use to simulate the combustion in internal combustion engine that in turn is in one of these ships. These emissions are then distributed by wind and dispersion, and we have a special agent that is responsible for that. So what you see here is a 24 animation of the emissions in Singapore of ships before Singapore, and this is an example of true interoperability. We have crossed many domain boundaries in order to be able to create this virtual sensor. But of course, now moving a scale up, now we look at the whole of the UK, you can also include political data. And one of the key pieces of data for government, especially now, is fuel poverty. This is from the Department of Business Industrial Strategy. And what you see here, the blue areas are basically areas where people can pay their fuel bill, and the red areas are areas where people to struggle to meet the costs of the heating. So that was using the world avatar as a sort of oracle. So you can ask questions and it will give you answers. But of course, if everything is connected, and this is the brain, just like your brain can control your body, the world avatar can also control the world, okay, like actual technology. So I give you a few examples how that happens. So I already told you about this representation. Yeah, here I start at city. I could go further to the left, but then from city to building to laboratory to assets in the laboratory to the actual molecule. And if you look at things, just like you can look at the chair next to you, this has a position, so there is a spatial meaning to it. It has geometry, it has a certain shape, and it has a certain function. And these items are described within ontologies. And for different areas, we have already specific ontologies, and they are all pulled together in the world avatar. So we have, in this space, created a number of demonstrations. So we're talking about 3D lab representation, building management system, inventory management, reordering chemical, automated experiments. As I told you, the knowledge graph has knowledge of chemistry. It can act as a scientist. And now it has also access to what happens in the laboratory. So let's fly into our laboratory. And this is the Create Tower. This is the research wing. And this is a experimental robot. Then we have here the flammable liquid cabinet with a bottle in it. And we're now moving to a second part of the lab where we have a fridge. What you see here is a building information model representation of the instances that are in the knowledge graph. So this is not just a visualization. Each of the things you saw actually knows what they are, right? So what you can do then, you can then get this chemical robot to find reactions, chemical reactions that synthesize sustainable chemical in better ways, with less waste, with fewer side products, with less energy entry than we knew before. And that doesn't require a human. That will be completely done by the world avatar. And of course, you can also operate the air conditioning. This is an example of coupling the world avatar with the building management system. And here you see the instances. The dark thing is a room, is the lab, then a room, and then the sensors, and then the sub-sensors in the sensors. And we're getting this live data in order to control cooling water. And I'm proud to say that the student who did this is sitting over there. I'm not using my laser. Sushant, thank you for your hard work. And without, without these wonderful students, none of this would have happened. Then we have moved on. I told you we have a daughter company in Germany. Here we optimized the district heating network. So there are different boilers, and we were operating this heating network and could save 20% cost and CO2 emissions. So finally, I want to move on to the last thing the world avatar can do. Just as your brain can imagine things. For example, you could imagine that I was wearing a hat, okay? With the power of your imagination, I'm standing here with a hat, okay? So in the same way, you can create scenarios that are connected to the live world. So if you imagine I'm wearing the hat, then the hat is virtual, but everything else is in the live world. So if I walk, you would see the imagined hat following me. And that is exactly what we mean when we talk about parallel worlds. And what you see here is a scenario that investigates what would happen if you decided to equip all British households with heat pumps. Heat pumps are used to turn electricity into heat, basically an opposite of an air conditioning system. And the idea is that the electricity is CO2 free, and you don't need to burn gas, and hence the CO2 emissions for households goes down. So this is a very good thing, right? Now let's go and implement it. So we implement it, and then we look at the fuel bills. Now you have to know that a heat pump's efficiency is proportional to the temperature it is installed in. So now this means when it's cold, they work less well. And for that reason, you now see that there is red in the north of England and blue in London, where it's always hot. And what do these colors mean? This is again an indication of fuel poverty. So when the color goes red, the fuel bill goes up, and when the color goes blue, the fuel bill goes down. And unfortunately, this inversely correlates with the wealth of people. So the rich bankers in London have to pay less when we introduce fuel heat pumps, and the workers on Teesside, they have to pay more. This is a bit unfortunate. So therefore, you can use these parallel worlds and scenarios to do regional aware policy. So you have to compensate for these societal impacts in order to be able to roll out carbon neutral technology. And then finally, I'll show you one of the key results of the National Digital Twin emphasis project in the UK. It was Credo. And let me just play the video for you.
Credo, the climate resilience demonstrator, is a climate change adaptation digital twin. The digital twin combines a description of assets from the energy, water, and telecoms networks with data from flood simulations to resolve the effect of flooding on individual assets, and the corresponding cascade of effects across the combined network. This example considers a 1 in 100 year storm, under worst-case climate projections. For the year 2070, the depth of flooding caused by the storm is shown in these blue patches. Assets that experience problems due to the storm are highlighted with red rings. An asset can be selected to view details about it and investigate the cause of failure. In this case, the power state is reported as false, meaning that the asset is out of service. However, the water depth is negligible, so the asset itself is not flooded. To determine the cause of the failure, we can investigate the dependencies of the asset. Here we see that the asset can receive power from one of two primary substations. Despite the apparent resilience in the network, we can see that both primary substations have been knocked offline by deep floodwater. The failure of these substations cascades to their dependencies, resulting in further failures across the network. In the future, such digital twins could pull data from other sources, including live streams of data, improving their ability to represent the real world, allowing for more effective decision support across multiple sectors. Credo illustrates what can be achieved by sharing data across sectors and demonstrates how the use of connected digital twins might be used to support better decision making.
Right, so that was the Credo result, and hopefully it gave you an idea what the World Avatar can do. If you are interested to learn more about intelligent decarbonization, especially about the whole breadth of the field, then I would like to do a little bit of advertisement. This is a book I have edited together with Dr. Inderwilde, and it contains a whole variety of articles and interviews that would give you an idea of the technical implementation, the legal consequences, the cybersecurity, what it means for NGOs, what it means for industry, what it means for government. So the whole topic of decarbonization is nicely displayed. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and that you didn't fall asleep, but at least not everyone. And I am ready to take some questions if you have some.
First of all, really great presentation. A question, the climate modeling looks super interesting. One of the challenges with climate change are obviously the cross-dependencies between different climate systems. Is that taken into account by your models?
At the moment, not yet, but the World Avatar, we are now instantiating the world forests. We're instantiating the elevation. We basically pull in any data we can get, and the moment it is then in the World Avatar, it means it's accessible to everyone. That means we can then revisit our models, we can then make them more precise, we can use live data, we can use historical data. So I anticipate that in the future, our ability to model weather and climate will increase significantly. And this is, of course, then available to everything that's in the knowledge graph. For example, this loudspeaker will have access to the weather in London. It's worth thinking about it a little bit. This technology will revolutionize everything. Because if only half of the stuff I say will be implemented, it'll have enormous consequences. You saw the laboratory. So this laboratory is now fully instantiated down to the molecules. This system can create new molecules based on the chemical knowledge. Not sure how familiar you are with chemistry, but there are databases like PubChem that is now instantiated. Okay? And it doesn't need human input. And the beauty about that is the moment something new is found, it's immediately tagged with a meaning, so the system knows what it is. It's not just data. It can be then serve any other process that is within that knowledge graph.